Relax. Eric, wait, just... I know you're out there.
Let's move.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So, it looks like Captain America Brave New World is eating shit because it looks like it has incurred with its black supremacist race communism a conservative boycott. And look, that's probably deserving. Look, maybe it's not fair to say that it fully deserves it. I mean, most of the, black supremacist race communism came mainly from the race swapping of, regular Captain America with, Falcon, some black guy who, flies around with wings, doesn't have super soldier serum, doesn't have the clean heart of Captain America that he is able to lift Thor's hammer, that he is so worthy. Just kind of like a black guy. But yeah, I mean, his outburst was that, Captain America doesn't represent America. It's kind of in the fucking name that he represents America. He was like, from the time in World War II when America's soul was forged, when they defeated, the evil Nazis, they stepped up and killed the Nazis who were killing people for no reason and trying to conquer the world. Well, that's one of two moments where, America's soul was forged. It was like that and the Civil War, when America outlawed slavery and then fought the Civil War to outlaw it, basically. And won, by the way. Unlike, places like China where the fucking communists won and they're still in power and they're still abusing their people. Just absolutely hopeless places where evil triumphed. Russia's another one of those with, with old Stalin. And then you've got Britain, which was so demoralised with their victory post-World War II, in siding with Stalin, that they kind of mass imported, socialism and communism into their government, and these days you've got the leftovers of all that fucking policy from that time. So, yeah. But, America, guys, it doesn't represent America. Yeah, of course it doesn't. But, the title... the title gets me. What the fuck were they trying to say with the title? The title's just nonsense. The title's Brave New World, from the Aldous Huxley novel. It was a science fiction dystopia of a purely secular, purely designer, purely materialistic world, where the focus of humanity in the novel was entirely consumption and status in society, where humans are literally created into a tube to be, certain levels of intelligence and class and that sort of thing. Literally, they are handicapped and, manipulated in the tubes at birth in order to fit like a social hierarchy. And they just forego any individual freedom or ability to think, or any like Christian values, sanctity of the body, any morals like that, in order to just satiate like basic pleasures and impulses in like a purely atheist, mechanical, secular, materialist, functionally Marxist manner. Like it's sort of like a Marxist utopia. Like, for example, like the women cannot deny sex to any person that asks there, and everyone takes drugs, which is, there's like a type of drug that basically picks up your mood. It's what, you know, SSRIs, I guess, were, you know, billed as. They're not that. But they take these drugs to lift their mood, essentially medically, you know, getting rid of any existential void and lack of meaning that they have in this, like, hollow, you know, shallow society. So, like, no one's capable of being depressed. And everyone is basically like a sort of a narcissistic sociopath just acting within their role and trying to satisfy their most basic urges. It's just like a horrifying soulless society. And, like, that was the whole point of the novel. People misconstrued the point of that novel to be, you know, free sex, sex positivity and that sort of thing. No. That wasn't the point. But yeah. But, like, because everyone thought that was the point, and we have basically lines, you know, causal lines of, you know, logic that show free sex is actually absolutely fucking terrible for societies. Like, the whole hippie idea of sex and women being able to have birth control and, you know, have sex, like, whenever they want, in a shallow manner with super easy access. Like, yeah, no, we have causal chains of reasoning now that show that that's absolute dog shit. First of all, it just greatly increases the amount of promiscuity among women. In so doing, it completely destroys the women's ability to form relationships and thus being able to form families. Meaning you've got like a bunch of single mothers and fatherless children. Fatherless children, by the way, have massively increased risk of being either criminals, mentally ill, or turning to drugs. You know, just out of existential void from having no structure from a male role model. So we have causal chains of reasoning to point out that female promiscuity, like from feminism, that sort of shit, is really fucking bad for societies. It's absolutely fucking atrocious. That being said, I'm not saying women should be forced married or anything like that, as in like Islamic cultures, for example. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying feminism, free love, promiscuity with absent Christian values of, you know, monogamy, monogamous relationships, families is absolutely fucking atrocious. And absolutely terrible for society. But anyway, back to Brave New World. It's basically one big condemnation of what like a secular, atheist, socialistic, materialist utopia would look like. What does that have to do with Captain America, or not Captain America, who's like a race-swapped black supremacist communism, where Captain America doesn't represent America, but apparently represents the cultures of other lesser nations? Yeah, I don't know. Seems like a fucking jumble of nonsense to me. And, like, that whole presupposition is just itself just racist as fuck. The presupposition there of these, like, black supremacist race communists is that white people don't have a culture, when, like, the actual truth is they have... Well, at risk of sounding like a Nazi, white people have the superior culture. The Christian Free West is a superior culture to any other culture currently manifesting itself. That includes communists, by the way, you dirty communists. And like, if we really want to just go through a brief history of like every other culture, like we can do that if you want. Like, are you talking about communist, white, so white Russians, which are like communist or, you know, post-communist? Or the, you know, the white diaspora of like post-World War II conquered European states that went through like communism and then half freed themselves, half remained in like communist sort of pseudo-states? Like, are we talking about those states that are superior? I mean, are we talking about Islamic Muslim culture that has, you know, very quietly presided over the conquering of every single minority in Muslim states and essentially the extremely quiet ethnic cleansing of them? Like, of course you have the loud ones like the Armenian genocide, the Assyrian genocide and the Greek genocide, where, you know, they were outright killed and exiled. But you also have the very soft, you know, cultural destruction within Muslims. Like, you're not allowed to build churches if you're a Christian. You're not allowed to, in some places, you're not allowed to, you know, proclaim you're a Christian, that sort of deal. And then, of course, you have within that culture just the massacres of Christians. Just like in Africa, like every other week, there's like a massacre of, you know, Christians, just absolutely innocent Christians by fucking Muslims. Like, and then you've got your pogroms of your Jewish people, you've got your pogroms of Kurds in Turkey, you've got your pogroms of Christians, you've got your pogroms of Hindus and that sort of thing. Are we really going to like try and say Muslim culture is superior? It's like the fucking worst, actually. It's very close to Nazi, like being like Nazi level. Like, it itself got away with like 3 genocides where we condemn the Nazis for just 1 genocide. And Muslim culture's been at it for years and years and years, and it's just been quietly encroaching the whole time, doing the same thing. Massacres everywhere, pogroms everywhere, just the quiet forced conversions that you don't hear about. In addition to all that shit, it's got like child marriage, which is like, you know, pedophilia, outright pedophilia, accepted within culture, and it's also got forced marriage, which is rape. It's got rape accepted within culture. Like, you want to say that's superior to the Christian Free West? I don't think so. I don't think a lot of people think so. India, kinda. It's better than Islam, I guess. But like, even then, there's not a whole lot of national pride there. A lot of the view in India is that it was like a child taken under the tutelage of the British Empire, in a colonial sense. That being said, you've got awesome things in there. You've got Gandhi. Like, don't look at it as, you know, sleeping with underage girls. By the way, just sleeping with, not touching. It was a test of his, I don't know, control, I guess. But, you know, kind of weird anyway. Don't look at any of that shit. But he, like, led a peaceful sort of resolution against, you know, the British. Like, that's admirable. That's something you can build your national pride on. In addition to that, they fought as a, you know, colonial entity in most wars and world wars and stuff like that under the side of the British, which was, for the most part, the good side. And then, of course, you've got the Kashmiri War, where they fought the Muslims, fought Muslims back pretty much. I suppose you can blame Britain on that one a little bit, but Britain probably saved Indian culture by splitting the Muslim and Indian states. Oh, by the way, when he did that, when he did that, like, Britain created Pakistan. Pakistan is 70% inbred from, you know, cousin marriage, and has like a 3 times higher birth defect rate, has like an average IQ of 80. So Indian culture might have been saved by that one move. If Islam had dominated Indian culture at that point, we would be basically looking at an entire India full of people which were Muslim. So Britain probably actually saved them with that move, and like, that was one of the things Gandhi was railing against, was the splitting up of the peoples of India. But hey, yeah, fair enough. They won their independence, and also, like, Kashmiri War, they pushed to get back against the Islamics there. They fought the Japanese, which is completely overlooked. And they were like badly outnumbered at one point. And they basically defeated the Japanese. They repelled the attempt of the Japanese to invade through Burma, which is pretty impressive. Like, that's well done. There's national pride to be had there for sure.
That was something.
That being said, oh yeah, and they also fight China on the border pretty regularly, and they managed to maintain their independence and society right next door to communist China, which is, you know, essentially a colonial communist entity in its own part. So all of that's just, you can derive national pride there for sure. Way more than you can under Islam, but yeah, I regress. But they do have some bad points. They've got like an absolutely atrocious caste hierarchy system there, which is really not far off slavery. And yeah, look, they've got good points and they've got bad points. China and Russia are basically instances of what happens if your entire history you have been conquered and ruled by evil totalitarian men. China, you've got the dynasties formed from either emperors, Mongols, or communists, so you're pretty much fucked. Russia, same sort of deal. You were run by like a king or a czar, which was not heaps far off what Britain was, but it was also a lot worse because, you know, there was a lot of not far off slavery serf shit going off. And after that, the communists killed the the Tsar and everything. So you've got communist shit rule after that, where everyone's starved to death. Then you got your Red Terror, then you got your gulags, and you got your Holodomor and all that sort of shit. So basically, the people there are completely subject to corrupt governments and are completely learned helpless in the face of those governments, completely demoralized. Also has to be said, in both of those societies, Christians were persecuted, so you have a complete absence of Christian values, which probably explains why they're so fucking dog shit. There's so much suffering there, people starving to death. The informant state worked so well there, with neighbours ratting on neighbours to get them to the gulags and to seize their own goods and that sort of deal. The lack of Christian ethic there probably contributed greatly to that. And then I guess you've got Japan in terms of national pride. Well, I guess you had samurais. Samurais are cool. But samurais were also, you know, only functional in basically fucking horrible totalitarian slave states with completely capricious totalitarian rulers with like harems and inflicted cruel tortures on people. That sort of deal. I suppose that hierarchy, after they got opened up to the West and were forced to, you know, adopt a new way of military and that sort of thing, did translate into a pretty successful military. Of course, they completely lacked any sort of Christian morality, but they did conquer like large swaths of Korea, China, that sort of deal. I think they fought Russia and defeated Russia as well. So like they did pretty well in terms of military speaking, but they weren't, you know, moral. Their armies were famous for war crimes and just horrible treatment of prisoners and stuff like that. There was instances where they like machine gun nurses. They forced nurses to march out into the water and then machine gun them. Famously cruel to the people they captured in the Pacific, used them for bayonet practice and that sort of thing. And also they had their horrible medical experiments like Unit 731, where they basically used Chinese prisoners to test biological weapons, infected them with random diseases, raped them, beat them, tortured them, forced them into decompression chambers, had rats eat them. Like, just the worst shit. Like, probably worse than the Nazis, I think. Like, and yeah, just absolutely fucking horrible shit. I suppose you can draw a bit of national pride out of their commitment to battle, which was, you know, pretty admirable. Like, it eventually just amounted to mass suicide, and then, you know, because they were resorting to mass suicide, the West went, fuck this, we're not dealing with the losses you will inflict with mass suicide charges, we're just going to nuke you. Like, okay, like, it's kind of noble to be so committed to a cause that you will give your life in essentially a suicidal charge in order to try and defeat an enemy. But if your enemy are the good guys and you're the bad guys, can you still draw national pride out of it? Like, I don't know. And if you're also fighting for the societal authority or government that is doing fucked up shit like Unit 731, and you're that committed to it, like, you're kind of the evil guys. That being said, after the nuking, they became very chill. Very intelligent marketers, good automation, that sort of thing, good quality in their products, that sort of deal. Their commitment to making products. So, you know, they kind of chilled out a bit. That being said, like, how do you draw national pride from that? It's, at best, a mixed bag. Like, it's mostly completely immoral evil, just conquering other nations and killing masses of civilians, like rape of Nanking, Unit 731, horrible war crimes against prisoners of war, horrible war crimes against the Chinese. Yeah, I don't know if you can draw national pride out of that. I guess you were cool samurais at one point, though. I don't know. Like, to put it into perspective on how bad they were, there was a Nazi present at the rape of Nanking, and that Nazi saved 50,000 Chinese people. His name was like Jonathan Rabe or something. That being said, completely condemn the Nazis. It's just another form of totalitarian, like, leftist totalitarianism that resulted in massive war, inflicted massive starvation on Russia, horrible rape in Russia to trade for food. To be fair, they killed a fair few Russian communists who themselves were pretty evil and that sort of deal. But that's kind of just bad guy versus bad guy. And then, you know, the West came from the left, the Russians came from the right, ganged up on them. The West largely just pushed them back, then formed the Falaise Pocket, and then encircled them and took a bunch of prisoners. And the right, they just pushed all the way to Berlin and inflicted massive casualties along the whole way and beat them down, basically. So that being said, no or limited national pride for Russians, Japanese, Chinese, or Nazis, basically. They're all quite evil compared to the West, which the West, you know, the West was the guy that tried to stay out of the war for as long as possible, and then it became obvious that the Nazis weren't going to stop. They were going to continue trying to conquer everywhere. They were succeeding. They were doing horrible medical experiments to Jews. They were killing Jews en masse. So Americans stepped in, defeated them, but more importantly, the Americans took on and defeated the Japanese, which were as evil, if not more evil, than Nazis at the time, and ultimately put the stamp on it by nuking Japan. Which, you, like, that's morally ambiguous itself. Like, the nuking of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they weren't military targets. I suppose you can argue that the taxpayer is a military target if you're like a Islamist terrorist or something like that, and you're gonna, like, bomb the, you know, World Trade Towers or whatever, fly planes into them. But they were civilian targets, and worse still, Japan tolerated a little bit of Christianity in it at that time, and I think Hiroshima and Nagasaki had the highest concentrations of Christians there at the time of the bombing, which is a bit fucked. I don't think you want to be bombing Christians. That being said, you could probably make the case for bombing Christians because they're, like, the best net tax contributors in countries. Like, most Islamic states devolve into horrible dogshit dictatorships after they persecute their Christian minorities, which they two-tiered tax, by the way. They don't tax regular Islamic people. I don't know if that's changed in modern times, but it's a complete two-tier tax state, right? They have the jizya for everyone who's not Islamic. It's basically an extra tax applied to other people. So you've got a horrible, supremacist two-tiered state. I guess the left are fine with it because it's not strictly a racial supremacy, it's an ideological supremacy. Even though, Islam is vastly inferior. It's absolutely horrible. Child marriage, cousin marriage, forced marriage, killing of apostates, the whole deal. It's trash. And then I guess after that you have your black supremacy. Your Anthony Mackie is trying to say Captain America isn't America. So let's talk about Africa a bit, if we're gonna, criticize cultures. Most of Africa has just been a series of, warlords, cannibalism, child soldiers, dictators, blood diamonds and Islam, so complete fucking trash. Complete trash culture. Never been proper states. Usually been, horrible military dictatorships that either starve or kill their civilians with militias. So why don't you go get fucked? Anthony Mackie? Fuck your inferior African culture. Ooh, that sounded a bit racist. I should point out that it's not racial that the Africans are inferior. It is social and cultural. It sounds a bit bad if you just say Africa is inferior. Kind of is, though. I mean, they're completely mineral. They're so mineral rich. Like, they have fucking diamonds there. They have rubber there. They have rare earth minerals there. They've got cobalt. They've got oil. And they're just... People try to blame the West for, supplying dictators and that sort of thing. I think the West is not largely trying to create a horrible, unstable situation there. Like, fair enough, they may be trying to get to the minerals, but the best way to get to the minerals is through stability, so they'd be trying to install stable governments. That being said, when everyone in government is shit there, and they're either like a military dictator, the next guy in charge of the army, usually doing a coup or something like that, and it just results in what Africa is, where you've got child soldiers, people killing like civilians en masse, just fucking no reason, pretty much. You've got warring militias, you've got rival militias, you've got crime everywhere, mass starvation. Then you've got international aid trying to prop up all this, but all the international aid does is fund the dictators. And then, yeah, it's just like a complete fucking mess. Like, if you're an African, how do you claim any sense of national pride out of what Africa is? Like, the good guys have not won there in government ever, I don't think. Like, what? Yeah, but, okay. Let's go black supremacist America. Captain America is not for America. Captain America is for the brown people. Yes, the brown people that have formed brilliant societies all by themselves, have competed with white Christian free West well, have abolished slavery. Spoilers, they never abolished slavery. The Middle East didn't abolish slavery. Like, it's only in the last 10, 20 years, like, to put it into perspective, like, there were still Islamic states in the 60s, that were, like, using slavery. Africa is probably worse than that, because they were, like, betraying their own, black people and selling them into slavery. White people in America and, Europe were using slaves, fair enough. But, yeah, okay. Who done more damage? The person who created the slave and sold him, or the person who bought the slave? Who's more responsible for that scenario, I guess? And then, of course, you've got, like, the ugly little truth. If you could have a slave, would you? Like, I bet you a fuck ton of leftists would answer that question morally, but, you know, would be on the other side of that equation. Like, take Kamala Harris, for example, whose, you know, ancestors were slavers. They were black slavers, because she's part Indian, part Jamaican, I think it was. She's closer to, you know, her being a slaver and having slave in her ancestry than most white people. So, I mean, you know, fuck off. And then, of course, you've got the dirty communists who sentence people to gulags for like 25 years time, and in the gulags they are basically doing slavery. Like, one of the grifts was that the people in gulags were running gold mines and silver mines, the idea being that gold and silver holds its value and the rest of the communist economy was shitting its pants. But yeah, like 55 million to 65 million slaves in communist Russia. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about how pretty much the entire population of North Korea, as a result of China's intervention in the Korean War, slaves? Do you want to talk about the amount of, you know, child slaves mining cobalt? Black starving child slaves mining cobalt for China current day? Do you want to talk about how you can make an argument that the entire population of China current day, due to, you know, social credit systems, are slaves? Like, where do you draw the line for slavery? And like, all that's communism. That's not based on race. That's based on ideology. I would say communism has enslaved more people than capitalism ever has. And like, you can make that case pretty easily, just given like the 55 to 65 million people in gulags in the Soviet Union. You can argue that the entire population of the Soviet Union was slaves, because they were essentially forced to not criticize the Communist Party. There were laws against it. And yeah, like, that's just straight up control of people, right? You're forced to work, forced to contribute to the economy, forced to undergo post work social functions, that sort of deal. Like, so this whole criticism of, you know, white Christian culture just fucking rings absolutely hollow to me, especially when it's coming from fucking communists and Marxists. Like, Marx himself was, you know, a dogshit sort of Satanist who may have raped one of his maids and then may have impregnated her, and then denied that he did it and abandoned the child that, you know, came out of his probable rape. Like, that's your moral, like, center? Some dude who, like, raped a lady? Yeah, like, okay, I guess if you're, like, Marxist and you want to draw, like, criticisms of the West, some of those criticisms might be valid, but if they're coming from a Marxist point of view, are any of them actually fucking valid? It's like, Marxists and communists are fucking way worse. Which just brings me back to the point. Okay, you've got a black supremacist race communist, one of the newest and, you know, kind of worst things to come out of, you know, the whole left communist totalitarian sort of government structure. And you've got a criticism of what is essentially a Marxist utopia in the title, and it's getting boycotted. It seems to me perfectly reasonable that it's getting boycotted. I would have predicted that it would get boycotted, because I don't think people are ultimately that stupid. But anyway, yeah.